Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
I do have that too.
Thanks for being here. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. My name is Laurel. I'm the assistant manager here. And I'd like to thank everyone who's here, as well as our online audience, for joining us at our event tonight celebrating 40 years of the Whiting Award. I encourage everyone here to check out the other events we have happening this month. It's a really stacked month, and you can find all of that information on our website. Please take this moment to silence your cell phones, and are pictures okay? The readers?
Yeah.
Okay with pictures? All right, if you'd like to take pictures, go ahead, but please make sure the sound is off. And just a little plug for the store, please buy books from us. It really helps us as a store and helps us to continue putting on events like this, which support the authors and the wonderful work that they're doing, and you get a new book out of it. Books are always available for purchase in-store and our website. So tonight we're going to hear readings from each of our, well, now 3 guests. We don't know where Evan Jordan is quite yet. We'll hold space for him. But we have Rita Bullwinkel, Samantha Gillison, and Brontez Purnell here. Each reader will introduce the next, and afterward we'll have signings at the back desk. So a little bit about the Whiting Award. Since 1985, the Whiting Foundation has supported creative writing through the Whiting Awards, given annually to 10 emerging writers in fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and drama. The foundation hopes to identify exceptional new writers who are just making their mark in the literary culture. The grant ideally offers recipients a first opportunity to devote themselves fully to writing, and a recognition has a significant impact. Whiting winners have gone on to win numerous prestigious awards and fellowships, including the Pulitzer Prize, the National Book Award, the National Book Critics Circle Award, the Obie Award, and MacArthur, Guggenheim, and Lenin Fellowships. And their work has shaped and advanced literature in this country over the past 3 decades. So let's give all our readers a hand before they come up individually. Thank you for being here. And our first reader, Rita Bullwinkel, is the author of the short story collection Belly Up, which won a 2022 Whiting Award. She is the editor of McSweeney's, the deputy editor of The Believer, a contributing editor for Noon, and an assistant professor of English at University of San Francisco, where she teaches courses in creative writing, zines, and the uses of invented and foreign languages as tools for world building. Headshot, her debut novel, was longlisted for the Booker Prize 2024. Please join me in welcoming Rita Bullwinkel.
Hi, so fun to be here with you all this evening. I am going to read you a section of my novel Headshot that I don't normally read because we have a little bit longer. I think we each have like 10 minutes to read. I'm going to read to you from this book is structured as a series, as a boxing tournament, and each something that resembles a chapter is a face-off between 2 of the main characters in the book. And so I'm going to read to you from a section later in the book titled Rose Mueller versus Tanya Ma. And in this section, the narrator posits some possible thoughts on why young women often play hand-clapping games. Rose Mueller versus Tanya Ma. In girls' hand-clapping games, there are no winners. You may be chided for missing a beat or for forgetting one of the lyrics, but there is no victor that lies ahead for just one of the participants. Hand-clapping games exist only in a state of play or a state of rest. However, they are not free of competitiveness. There is a pressure exerted by young girls upon one another to continue to clap, to chant the tongue-tied, lewd nursery rhymes for as long as possible. This competitiveness lies in the clapping pair's desire for maximum endurance. The lyrics of girls' hand-clapping games are endless. Their choruses always circle back on themselves so that the game is played on loop, begun again by the same lyric that signals the game's end. As the referees begin this fourth bout, the last bout of the day, in this darkened warehouse where only 9 onlookers remain, there is the implication of a loop or the suggestion of a repetition, a circular groove within which the tournament has fit its narrative. These last bout fighters look caricatured in their desire to beat one another. They each wear frowns that make them look like actors. The industrial bulbs of Bob's Boxing Palace cast omnipresent white like the lighting seen in theaters. In stage acting, makeup must be twice as caked to even show up to the eyes of the audience. Because of this, in this washed-out ring of light, Rose Mueller and Tanya Ma both look like they have monochrome white faces. Rose Mueller's hair is cut so short that you can barely see it under her headgear. Tanya Ma has woven her hair into 2 looped braids. Her ovals of hair stick out of her headgear and place droopy circles on her back. Tanya Ma has her shoulders pulled forward over the center of her spine. Tanya Ma pushes her hands towards Rose Mueller, and Rose Mueller moves her own hands to greet them. They're not clapping, but their hands are smacking each other in rhythm. Tanya Ma can hear clapping rhymes as her fists touch the fists of Rose Mueller. "I'm an actor," says Tanya Ma in her head to herself. Tanya Ma needs to play the part of a winner. The most famous hand-clapping game Tanya Ma knows is the one about the tugboat, where the last line of every verse morphs from a normal word into a crude trick. Tanya Ma used to love this game, although now at 17 she is decidedly too old to play it. There had been something wonderful about listening to even her best, most well-behaved classmates put words in their mouths that changed mid-breath from banal to naughty. The words had changed while still lodged in their throats. She could see the words themselves shape-shifting, the strangeness of the word ask changing into ass, a fly bug changing into a crotch-covering zipper. As a young girl playing hand-clapping games for hours on end, Tanya Ma had seen small 1-inch sculptures of the morphing words on the tongues of her playmates. When her playmates got to the end of a verse, she could see the sculpture of the word remold itself from something boring into something forbidden, and then these forbidden word sculptures were spit out into a pile on the pavement between the 2 girls who were at play. The more verses the girls got through, the more forbidden word sculptures they made. In those early days of girlhood, there were piles of these sculptures all over the playground. It was a graveyard of hand-clapping games that had been played earlier that day. Tanya Ma has never met Rose Mueller before, but the way that Rose is clenching on her mouthguard makes Tanya think Rose is about to spit out a forbidden word sculpture. There is something decidedly foul inside the mouth of Rose Mueller. Tanya Ma and Rose Mueller are not hand-clapping, they are boxing, but there is a collaboration in the way that they stand. When Tanya Ma extends her fist out, Rose Mueller greets it. When Rose Mueller puts her left leg forward, Tanya Ma moves back. There is also, technically, the referee in the ring with them, but the referee is no one. The referee is less than a person. The referee and the coaches and the judges, they are all so deeply separate. They think they are involved with this game, that they have power, but Tanya Ma and Rose Mueller have hoarded all the power for themselves. What is going on between Tanya Ma and Rose Mueller has nothing to do with the judges. The referees and the coaches are like the teachers who supervise their breaks between classes. They exist only to tell one the rules of recess. They are never involved in the politics, in the colossal dramas that unfold in the minutes between classes. Rose Mueller's and Tanya Ma's coaches do know one another. They have been coaching youth fighters who compete against one another for over 10 years' time. They are not close friends, but they have already made plans to, later in the evening, go out together. They were both thrilled when the Daughters of America tournament announced that it would be at Bob's Boxing Palace in Reno. They are deeply excited for the free drinks at the casinos. Tanya Ma lands a hit that makes Rose Mueller's coach and Tanya Ma's coach shout. When Tanya Ma and Rose Mueller swivel the corners of their eyes to look at their coaches, they see the coaches' bodies with their faces blurred out. When Tanya Ma looks at Rose Mueller, she sees a girl with boy band hair and laser beam eyes. It can be intoxicating to play a sport that requires one to look in their opponent's eyes. Tanya Ma wonders, while staring into the eyes of Rose Mueller, if this is why she is interested in both boxing and acting. There are so few activities that allow the intimacy of staring. When Rose Mueller looks into Tanya Ma's eyes, she sees orbs that look like fogged-in planets. Tanya Ma has a stray speck of black outside the center of her left eye. It's like a small piece of her pupil broke off and is orbiting a black moon. Rose Mueller thinks she sees the speck moving in a circle. Rose Mueller hits Tanya Ma in the ribs, and the hit begins to turn Tanya Ma's ribs purple. Rose Mueller grew up in Dallas. The playgrounds of her girlhood were littered throughout the various suburbs that satellite Dallas's strange neon core. On the Dallas playgrounds, Rose Mueller played the same hand-clapping games that Tanya Ma played growing up in Albuquerque, but some of the lyrics were slightly different, as if each group of clapping girls were connected by a 1,000-mile-long tin can and string. Here in Reno, Tanya Ma and Rose Mueller know each other, but they do not know that they share a clapping cannon. Rose Mueller and Tanya Ma are punching each other with speed and precision. Rose Mueller's short hair is fully wet. It is glued to her head. Rose Mueller's headgear and wet head feel as if they are all made out of the same material. Rose Mueller imagines her whole body being made out of the plastic foam of her headgear. With time and sun, her foam plastic head splinters. In the beginning of this bout with Tanya Ma, Rose Mueller was sure that she could make Tanya Ma splinter. The sun, long set at this point, is of no help now. Tanya Ma and Rose Mueller are boxing under floodlights. Rose Mueller is pushing her fists backwards and forwards. She narrows her eyes towards Tanya. Tanya narrows her eyes and returns the hit. The invisible network through which young American girls learn hand-clapping games is fueled by older sisters. The best older sisters from which to learn hand-clapping games are the ones who have recently departed from girlhood to driving. If one does not have an older sister, one must access an older sister through a friend. While it is from older sisters that the games are originally learned, once a game has been introduced to a group of girls, it spreads among them like a sickness. If there is rumor of a new hand-clapping game, one must learn it as quickly as possible. If the new game, Lemonade Crunchy Ice, for instance, appears during lunch on Tuesday, it must be learned by lunch on Thursday. In this way, a repertoire is built and enacted. The older sisters, while invaluable to the transmission of hand-clapping games, are also responsible for all of the mistakes in the lyrics. Their memories are not perfect. This is how whole states of girls develop alternate, new versions. I'll stop there. Thank you so much for indulging me that. It is my delight to introduce Samantha Gillison. Samantha is the author of The King of America and The Undiscovered Country, as well as numerous short stories, magazine articles, and book reviews. In addition to the Whiting, she has won a Guggenheim Fellowship. She lives in San Francisco. Woo!
Sorry.
Wow, that's okay.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. I'm so happy and honored to be here with you all celebrating the Whiting. And before I start, I just wanted to give you a heads up that in this piece that I'm going to read, this short piece, there is some mention of suicide and also of the very early days of the AIDS epidemic in New York. This is a piece that I wrote. I was commissioned to write to coincide with the opening of the High Line, which is this thing in New York that runs up the west side. Anyway. My parents moved into Westbeth, the artist housing complex in the West Village in 1970 when I was 3 years old. My very first jumble of memories are all from sitting in a red folding kiddie seat on the back of my father's bicycle, riding through the far west village through a cityscape so bleak that it is literally impossible to imagine if you visit the same places today. Homeless men and dock workers roamed cobblestone streets that glittered with smashed glass. A distinctive ka-clink, ka-clink of spray paint cans being shaken and then a whooshing sound meant that the graffiti writers were at work on the deserted High Line tracks. The High Line, built up above 10th Avenue in the 1930s, had carried freight trains down the west side of Manhattan until the 1960s, when trucking took over the business and the trains stopped running. Although a lot of the High Line had already been torn down by the time we moved into the building in 1970, a stretch of the abandoned tracks, rusted out and overgrown, ran through the Washington Street side of Westbeth, adding to the eerie, forgotten industrial feel of the place. Further west, trans prostitutes in feather boas and sparkly shoes lit the darkness underneath the abandoned elevated West Side Highway like fireflies. And I knew we were close to my nursery school on Horatio Street when the sweet, sour stink of rotting meat filled my nose as we bicycled past men in blood-splattered white coats hanging cow carcasses up on hooks, while fat, cat-sized wharf rats crawled around the sidewalks. Dreamed up in an era of civic idealism, Westbeth, originally called the National Artists Center, was unlike anything that came before it. Designed by architect Richard Meyer at the beginning of his career from 1967 to 69 and opened in 1970, the federally funded complex was, and still is, not only the largest artist community in the world, but the only one in the United States. While drawing up plans for Westbeth, Meyer was inspired by Le Corbusier's Unité d'Habitation in the French city of Marseille. Le Corbusier's complex is a kind of platonic ideal of low-income urban living, an extraordinarily stylish complex. Meyer converted the 725,000 square foot former Bell Telephone Labs, a series of yellow brick buildings which take up the square block of West Bank and Washington and Bethune Streets, into 383 apartments, as well as photographic darkrooms, galleries, performance spaces, and a dance studio where avant-garde dance legend Merce Cunningham's company has been ensconced since the beginning. Even if you disregarded the eccentric artists who occupied it, which was impossible if they were your parents, the Westbeth that the youthful Meyer created was a strange place to live. The whole space has an Eck 1969 psychedelic flavor. The lobby ceiling is a patchwork of neon pink, orange, and purple squares. The hallways, endlessly long affairs of the shining-like proportions, while great for skateboarding and terrifying games of hide-and-seek, are creepy labyrinths that howl with the winter winds that blow off the Hudson. When I was old enough to sneak out of the apartment unnoticed, I spent days with my friends exploring the countless nooks and crannies and secret hallways in those 725,000 square feet we crept around. The bizarre tugboat-sized boilers that sit in the basement, painted with leering cartoon faces, and in the summer jumped up in the courtyard fountain, which sprayed us with excitingly painful water pressure. But even so, I never felt that we had discovered even half of Westbeth's secret places. However, it was always those long hallways which provoked squeamish reactions from first-time Westbeth visitors. Every time a new friend came over for a playdate, I always got a version of, "Doesn't it freak you out to live in these hallways?" But really, the hallways were the least of it. In the spring, as the ice melts, there's a wind that blows off the Hudson up Bethune Street that's full of the rich, briny smell of the river. And it's that wet smell, so intense and evocative of my childhood in the far west village, that seeps through a memory of coming home from school one afternoon to find a neighbor splayed out on the sidewalk with his right leg sticking up at a 90-degree angle. A group of Westbeth residents and security guards had clustered around him. I, morbidly curious and 11 years old, lurked among them, gaping at his grotesquely twisted body. I knew this man who had jumped off the roof. He lived with his family down the hall from us. He was a German painter with a glass eye and 2 children around my age. As I stood staring at my neighbor, trying to fathom that he was no longer alive, an ambulance from St. Vincent's drove up in silence, splashing red shadows on a preternaturally calm crowd. No one cried or screamed, or even though almost all of them had seen the painter leap from the rooftop. The only discussion as the ambulance drove away that I remember were murmurings about the 2 children and their mother. Suicide, however sad, didn't shock anyone out on Bethune Street that day. It was part of life at Westbeth, In 1971, only a year after the building opened, the photographer Diane Arbus famously took her life in her fourth-floor apartment. And the German painter was only the latest in a series of artists. But whatever high human tragedy shellacked the complex, its community behaved the way they did that afternoon, calm for the most part, reflexively protecting their own. And for all its weirdness, filth, and rough edges, Westbeth and the far west village it was plunked at the edge of was an Aladdin's cave of humanity. When we first moved into the building, one of the places my father took me to most often on his bike was Ruth Burke's antique shop at 374 Bleecker Street. Ruth liked to look after me while my parents, who were too poor in those days to hire a babysitter, did their errands. At the back of her antique store, crammed in between old European dressers, chests, and paintings, was a round wood table, a hot plate, kettle, and shelf stocked with tins of Savarin coffee and ginger snaps. Every day in the back of Ruth's store was a rollicking salon, crowded with soignés gay men, many of them distinguished and famous, like the black gay rights activist Bjard Rustin with his gold rings and carved walking stick, or Andy Warhol under his weird wig. But also around her table were other antique store owners, musicians, dancers, writers, and anyone else who wandered off of Bleecker Street to sit on an uncomfortable Victorian chair and have a chat, a coffee, and a piece of the delicious day-old cinnamon babka that Ruth bought at the Hasidic bakery near her house in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, before she came to work. Ruth, who was an elderly single woman with an acerbic wit and impeccable self-taught taste in French and British decorative antiquities, had the most fabulous earlobes I had ever seen. They were long and soft, stretched out from a life of wearing too heavy chic earrings, she told me. She let me sit on her lap and stroke her earlobes while she held court among the boys, as she called him. The boys adored Ruth, who was a kind of surrogate mother to all. Since they knew it would please her, these accomplished, ambitious men doted on me. Broadway dancers Rodney and Tommy taught me soft shoe routines between a Louis XVI side table and a pair of Orkney chairs. Albert gave me antique dollhouse furniture from his legendary toy store, which, of course, children were not allowed in. And my most beloved of the boys, Norman, a waiter by day, lute player by weekend, sang for me. Norman, with his shaved, shining, bald pate, luxurious Nietzsche-esque mustache, black leather chaps, harness, and motorcycle boots, did not stand out of the crowd in the West Village in those days. But in the back of Ruth's store, he was a kind of black leather-wearing angel. He would arrive, take his wooden lute out of its case, gingerly place its enormous round belly against his taut one, and play haunting songs of Tudor England for us. My favorite in his repertoire was Greensleeves, which written, Norman told me, by Henry VIII himself. Norman had a rich operatic falsetto that seemed to make all of the furniture in 374 Bleecker Street vibrate. And as I sat on Ruth's lap while Norman sang, I had my first experience of the transcendental bliss of live musical performance. "Oi, Norman," Ruth would say, and give him a kiss when he finished singing. Such a voice. Such a voice. All of the men I knew from Ruth's store died in the earliest waves of AIDS when the West Village turned into a waking nightmare of skeletal young men covered in lesions wandering dazed, half-blind among the sidewalks. When I look back now, I see that it was the advent of AIDS that erased the West Village of my childhood, but at the time the changes came so slowly that they were almost unnoticeable. Like the annual paroxysm of exuberant creative idiosyncrasy known as the Village Halloween Parade, all my growing up it had been a locals-only affair that started in Westbeth's outer courtyard. Huge, terrifying papier-mâché puppets of witches, ghosts, hairy-legged spiders, and monsters were operated by silent puppeteers. Legions of men dressed to the nines swarmed the streets around Westbeth, fanning out east to Washington Square Park. Marie Antoinette was a regular, with or without her bleeding neck wound, although Nancy Reagan and the twat stewardesses in tight neon satin uniforms, fishnet stockings, and mustaches owned the front lines. Bella Abzug in a huge hat, the real thing, and more than a few very convincing trans impersonators of her, as well as Ed Koch, made appearances. But soon the parade's glorious strangeness faded into more of a New Orleans-style carnival and finally degenerated into the quasi-frat party it is today. Recently, walking with my 8-year-old son Henry along the beautiful park that has transformed the West Village's waterfront with its blooming roses, Japanese hyacinth, and manicured soccer fields, and wholesome joggers and rollerbladers whizzing past us, with nary a trans prostitute in sight, I tried to explain what the village was like when I was his age. Henry gave me a look of mingled disbelief and boredom. Yeah, but you still had the trapeze school, right? He asked. No, I said, trying for dignity. We did not have a trapeze school. And when I visited the exhibit at the Museum of Modern Art of the elaborate inventive designs to turn the old High Line into an exquisite public promenade that will run from Gansevoort up beyond 14th Street, I had the same sensation as I do walking along the new riverfront park. What a beautiful place it will be, I thought, examining the architectural drawings and computer renderings, marveling at the money it would cost and the creativity and vision that went into the planning. I can't wait to take Henry there to see it. But I felt no tug of emotion for the place, no sense that this was my home where I grew up, because the West Village of the 1970s and early 80s has not been transformed, it has disappeared. There is something new in its place along with the multi-million-dollar brownstone renovations. A wildly prosperous, aggressive, but totally new spirit hangs over it now. And now that dozens of high-end stores have taken over Bleecker Street, transforming its antique and junk shops into boutiques for the likes of Ralph Lauren and Marc Jacobs, the neighborhood has joined the city's mainstream in a way that its old, freaky self never could have imagined. Yet just when I thought I had worked through all 5 of the Kubler-Ross stages of grief for the death of the West Village of my childhood, I took Henry for another walk along the river one evening after we had dinner with my father, who still lives in Westbath. The wind was blowing off of the Hudson, and the river's waves were purple from the sunset, and I swear I could hear Norman's beautiful voice singing Green Sleeves. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. And it is my pleasure to introduce Brontez Purnell, who is the author of a graphic novel, a novella, a children's book, the novel Since I Laid My Burden Down, the story collection 100 Boyfriends, and most recently 10 Bridges I've Burnt, a memoir in verse. The recipient of a 2018 Whiting Award in Fiction, he is also the frontman for the band The Younger Lovers and a co-founder of the experimental dance group the Brontez Purnell Dance Company.
I've always wanted to give a reading in sunglasses, but I can't really see. But we're gonna try, because I'm a beatnik. You're actually not supposed to call them beatniks. They were called the Beats. I was on the internet last night. They were called the Beats, and I always thought it had something to do with jazz, but apparently it meant the beaten down generation. But it was a 1958 article where this really shitty San Francisco dude, to make fun of them, called them beatniks, Nick of relating to a social class in Russian. And so beatnik, you're not supposed to say beat, you're supposed to say the beats. Anyway, I'm having a beat look right now. I wrote this book. And the first poem is, I was going to read something else, but I was like, I figured this is the book right here. And so I was going to do it. This one is called Diversity Hire. I am fully fatigued by the Black Boy Magic hashtag, but of course, we know the only thing worse than a magical Negro is an unmagical Negro, and honestly, Hollywood deserves neither. It's about when I used to write TV shows. Anyway, I have come to the conclusion that I owe you bitches nothing. I stay ashy because ashy is natural, and I stay dehydrated because water tastes boring, but also largely because of how often I cry. I get disgusted at how goddamn often they tell the poets to put the pain in your work, that then your pain becomes immortal and the work a sort of tombstone. But I do not refute my life, my life, my life in the sunshine, and in the season of my ashy, dehydrated life in the sun, people pretend to not understand why I am insulted by being called thirsty by those who giggle over my corpse with an extra glass of water and a vitamin C packet in their hand. Does nobody love me? Water is free, like it literally falls out of the sky. And California is currently not in a drought. But to maintain a certain order, I stay dehydrated. Who has the time these days to go to the bathroom every 30 minutes? My best friend is the slacker white boy poet who somehow also works for Hollywood and makes 3 times the money I do. To be fair, he grew up just as fucked up as I did. The only difference is, he says, my neoliberal parents taught me the coded language of money. You are great at suffering, but you need more representation. The thought of having to convince more people that I am worthy of a 6-figure salary feels like work and also a sham. In all honesty, I am literally the lazy black person white supremacy warned you about. Yes, queen, give us nothing. 2. The position of staff writer so very suits the tagline of my life in that people love being entertained by me, but no one ever actually does what the fuck I say. Instead, I buy in to opt out. I'm going to sit in this room of white people, shut my black ass mouth, be well behaved, groom, collect this coin, and not let anyone know how demonically niggerish I truly am. And every once in a while, Hollywood pretends that it wants to hear what I have to say. I script black boy murder, she wrote, but no one really wants to hear about me and less often actually hear from me at all. I try not to be the kind of extravagant human who privileges his triggers for trauma. I am unfairly triggered most of the time. This is no fault of my present company, of course, but oh God, the flashbacks of when I was a little faggot, talking to my stepdad or gym teacher or whoever else thought that even my silence was taking up too much space. Oh God, the little faggot, he's talking again. He thinks he has something to say. Let's just smile and nod at him. Is no one listening to me, or am I just not talking? I can't tell anymore. 3. I can say that I am an angry man, but I am also still a responsible citizen. I try very hard not to make the only 6 white people I engage with on a weekly basis a metaphor for the greater percentage that probably wants me dead. I don't tell anyone about it. It's a balancing act, because it's rude to admit that you have no fucking clue what is going on, or how to push this void further away. I play the part, but I am no actor, only a scriptwriter, or at the very least, I try to act like one, though I hardly understand the assignment, or who they want me to become. I know very little about being a black pimp, and more than I would like to know about being a black prostitute. Even Hollywood writers' rooms mirrors every other room full of people on earth. We mutually engage in a participatory capitalism of whose feelings are bigger, and I have to opt out, as in, there is no gold medal to be had in the oppression Olympics. I shut the fuck up more often than I dare explain myself. These fucking hoes out here can't even feel their own pain. Like hell, I should trust them with mine. I keep my black boy belly aching confined to poems because I know people are very threatened by how competent I pretend to be. I expect them to expect me to marry a white man, move to the Hudson Valley, and never complain about anything ever again. Blacks, Jews, white passing people of any given racial group, and the invisible races respectfully, they all see me. I see the cold, dismissive disdain in virtually everyone's eyes whenever I try to explain to them that token Negro, unfortunately, is not a resting position. But in the twilight of my salad days, I have grown to find comfort in people expecting absolutely nothing out of me. I keep tabs on who is bigger at feeling nothing, and I guess the winner will be me today. And I can have you guess why it presently feels like it is against the laws of physics to feel pleasure right now. This poem is really unfortunate. It's about a fight. You know, there's like an interracial fight, but it's not with a white person, so everything becomes blurred. Anyway, this poem is called Tommy Chin. I had jumped Tommy Chin at the San Francisco Young Gay Poets Luncheon in 2004 because in my youth I struggled with decorum. That bitch had dissed my poetry in the annual newsletter, which I would have forgiven her if she had not also had the nerve to be skinnier than me, too. Not that being skinnier than me is any great feat, yet still, that bitch had to die. Oh, the critique in her venomous post about me. It rang to the tune of, well, why should we trust this voice? Meanwhile, her white-ass boyfriend, in the same poetry newsletter, mind you, actually published 7 typed rows of the lowercase e and was praised for his devotion to shape, space, and time. First of fucking all, if I really think about it, that is the list of who was both let into and shit all over the club called experimental literature. Why the fuck at this point need we question someone as pure as me about any goddamn thing? And every time someone who isn't a nigga or jazz adjacent critiques my work with excessive force, I still basically smile and bear it, but can't turn off the emotional switch that English, regrettably, is my only language, and I am being told a little too often for my liking that I have no real command of it if I am not writing like someone's favorite dead white man, or even more insultingly, like someone's white-ass boyfriend. I had let these bitches play me like a pit bull in a basement for far too long. My bad mood had started in the morning. I was young and kept late hours, and never smelled the fire burning, but on my way to the luncheon, the entire warehouse of near-homeless had burned, and it was word on the street that the landlord had did it, and my hooker friend China, who was sick, standing on the corner and needed money for dope, and Tommy sat in an apartment in the Castro with his poet boyfriend, and it occurred to me that I had always been closer to being homeless than I ever had been to living with a boyfriend in the Castro. This was not Tommy's fault, but I was just tired of every fault feeling like it was always mine. But if I really think about it, this was not about race. This was not about class. This was about my ego versus this other corny bitch. And sometimes I take great pleasure in reminding people who have hurt me why I am stronger than them. Tommy, my love, I want you to know that I hold space for and respect our mutual positionality of men of color in the sisterhood of battling white supremacy in the writing world is what I should have said before I jumped him, but I was speechless when I did a full frontal tackle and gripped his throat. His white-ass boyfriend stayed all the way out of it. I thought it was... and I thought it was a horrible racist trope of, like, Asian Americans being proficient at martial arts, and so I never saw that right hook coming that split my front right incisor in half, blood dripping from my gums. And then Tommy hit me again, and now I think I love him. My chokehold lost its economy, and Tommy caught his breath, and for all of 3 seconds before he charged me, and in a moment of divine clarity, I mumbled, I mutually give honor and respect to our positionality as men of color, Tommy, right before I grabbed a glass pitcher and hit him in the head so hard that to this day I am banned from the San Francisco Young Gay Poets Luncheon. But in my defense, I just had to signify that poetry is still dangerous. Okay, I think I got 2 more, I think. We can do it, we're gonna do more, we're gonna talk about writing even more. I really hated that TV job. They wanted me to show up on time. Anyway, this one's called On Writing. I can be quite vexed about how much American audiences overestimate their grasp of plot. These godless bitches are the worst. Somewhere in the majority of collective consciousness, the notion of plot is forever held hostage by the introduction chapter of Intro to Plot. If I recall correctly, it reads, synopsis, the killer is in the house, the car is outside, the car keys are somewhere, one must find the keys to get to the car to escape the killer, and that is plot. I, being the total fatherless pussy that I am always wondering about the emotional cracks that lie within this fictional narrative. The emotional landscape within the killer, him pondering that time he picked a flower in his youth and was happy before he slit some screaming bitch's throat. Or even the car, like how did the car feel? Was it a Volvo? I can reason that every person who has ever criticized literature who dared utter the plot was paper thin had to look at the arc of their own lives and if they were being honest said the same thing. I am a TV writer and can sit quite comfortable in the continuous existential crisis that if a room of 12 people dissected the choices of my life, none of it would make sense, or they would conclude that I have never once made the right choice. I am a TV writer and in the habit of making problems. My producer corrected me quite sincerely over a 19th draft of a 13th scene. I said to him, I needed these characters to have a resolution. And he said, this isn't a movie. Network TV is not in the business of resolving things. If you have a solution, you no longer have drama, and you, sir, will be out of a job. Prophetic words. I liken it to the time that I was a jizz mopper at a strip club in North Beach, and the madam told me and the other fag there, you can hook up with the guys, but you can't make them come because when they come, they stop spending money. 2. I am the first son of a third daughter of a family of 10. In certain European folklores, I hold what is called a cursed position. Subsequently, drama tends to surround me, so I decided to get paid for it. I am a TV writer, again, a cursed position. I have joined every cult ever offered to me with vigor. I throw myself to the wolves. I'm like that girl in those gangbang videos who giggles, I'm nervous, right before she clocks into work. And oh my stars and garters, I don't even like TV, but I am also a master of scripting unsolvable problems for myself and for others. I like writing for TV mostly because I don't have to pretend anymore that I'm not a drug addict. Some writers really buy into that whole narrator as God bullshit. In reality, I'm more a nanny because it recently occurred to me that I attend to the personal well-being of fictional characters more so than I do to my own, and drama tends to follow me home. More often than I'd like to talk about, I have blacked out on GHB in a random motel room and have woken up to the vigorous shaking of a hooker I hired for sex. Sir, are you okay? I think the poor guy was alarmed that they would find me dead at a day's end in the tenderloin with traces of his semen in my abdomen and rectum and his fingerprints on my phone from where he tried to steal $1,000 from my bank account. But again, I dosed myself. But isn't the hooker supposed to drug you? If I drug myself, isn't it God's will that a hooker robs me? These are the type of questions I pose in the writer's room next to my coworkers whose lives I'm sure are just as fucked up, but who have been doing it so long that there is no real drama left in anything. We actually have to concentrate now, says the man to my left, and I'm reminded how I'm always starkly oversharing, but sometimes the truth has this two-dimensionality that I can't always fit over my overly three-dimensional world. Because I, my love, am a pathological liar. I've done it so long, what other decent profession would even have me? We got 2 more, and then it's nice to read poetry because it's just all right there, right? This is called I Am Decided. It's named after that Kim Deal song. I said to my gay uncle when I was 20, the boys don't like me. Not even looking up from the fried chicken he was breading for dinner, he said to me, honey, go look outside that window there and on the sidewalk. You'll see that in San Francisco, even the trash gets picked up once a week. Okay, and the last one is called Daddy. Daddy. I am a bastard and I'm through. I am so very over it, and I am balancing on the prefaces of my fast-hardening arteries and erectile dysfunction. Now the boys start to flock to me, want to keep me warm at night, want to hear what wisdom I have scribed on a scroll. Dear boys, I don't know any goddamn thing, or maybe only one thing for certain. That is, being born with a dick does not make you a man. There's more rules to it than that. Like so many, many, many more. And as a man, the only real path to peace is that you must shut the fuck up, often and with vigor, but keep in your back pocket the knowledge of how to kill a son of a bitch if need be. I have murdered myself in small amounts so often, I have become ectoplasmic, can walk through walls. In my 20s in San Francisco, when me and the other boys were in between father figures, we sometimes had to be fathers for each other, the Lost Boys. I don't think I'll ever have that again. It was electric. In present day, I come home, hopped up on amphetamines, and try to watch porn. I see sometimes the dead boys in the porns, the ones that I fathered and the ones that fathered me, live on as porn puppies on the internet, Cum Pigs Volume 3, and so on. I'm reminded of the fact that most of the stars we see in the sky are presumably dead before their light reaches us, and the boy I once called father will be immortalized as the bottom getting fucked in some anonymous stairwell south of Folsom. I don't have to explain to you that when I say I feel old, I'm not always talking about my body. Sometimes I just mean that my pussy feels old, and that my light isn't reaching another galaxy fast enough, or will even do so in my lifetime, which by current metrics is conceptually half over. I am often reminded by men only 5 or 10 years older than me that I still have a baby face, and that my gentrification of the term old men is an insult to the decade they have on me. How blind the older men are to their own lives and mine. It need not take years of wisdom to see that I am a man who is disappearing. On a molecular level, my black is cracking. Thank you.
Give all of our readers another hand. Thank you all so much. There are stacks of books up at the front register by these 3 and 4 actually wonderful authors. If you'd like to buy a copy, they will be signing. And please eat and drink and mingle. Thank you so much for coming out.